Well, hey everyone. Looks like we got a few people joining here for our Pivot Live session to go through our siting application and just do some real-time property searches. So we'll just let everybody start coming in and we'll get started. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen real quick just so that we can start to look at the siting application and just have something to start talking about. All right. Well, yeah. So the intent today is really just to have more of just a kind of a casual conversation with those that are interested in doing some site searches. I can jump through and just run through a quick outline of the application, or if there's people that actually have specific areas in mind that they'd like to look at, then we can start jumping into those areas and start doing some site evaluations. Well, for those that are starting to jump in and join, I just wanted to go ahead and just introduce Pivot application just real briefly. Pivot is a geospatial processing platform focused on providing critical data for critical infrastructure. So we can start to jump into some areas where you'd like to maybe do some site evaluations. If there's areas of concern that you're looking at from the standpoint of needing to understand if there's critical species and habitat, wetlands and water bodies, if we have shallow bedrock, anything like that that you might be interested in taking a look at so that we can just run some of those searches for you. Okay, Frank. Yeah, if you just want to go ahead and just drop in some coordinates to the center location of your site, then we can just pop that into the Pivot platform and I can pull it in and we can start to run some basic reporting and just show you some of the outputs that we can provide. And if you don't have a lat long and if you wanted to provide like an actual street address, we can do that too. All right, so we have our first coordinates here. Let me copy that in. off some of these layers that are already on here. Let me turn on the parcels so that we can view the parcel outlines. All right, so Frank, is it going to be just this one right here where it says the Labyrinth, the Avalon Nature Preserve in this area here? Awesome. Okay. So what we can do when we actually identify a parcel and we want to start to run some analytics on it to identify the potential constraints associated with the property is that we can come in here, we can just use this add site feature on here to add that to our project sites. So we can click that and then we click into this parcel here. And that's going to go ahead and pull that into our parcel site where we can see the site acreage and we can start to run usable acreage calculations on that as well as the constraint reporting. So one thing that we are going to start to run right now is going to be that constraint report. We call them parcel reports. So this is just going to take a couple of minutes to run. What this is going to do is look at the potential data sets that are going to be in this property that we are selecting ourselves. So this is a fully customizable report where of the different data sets that we have in the platform that are over here and our layers fly out on the right-hand side, we can select any of these data sets that we'd like to report on. So if we're interested in understanding the potential for hydric soils, corrosive considerations, floodplains, it looks like there's probably going to be some species out here since it's a nature preserve. We can start to run those analytics and identify what is actually going on that property. So when we click that, we can see that it's grayed out and it's running. And when we come over here, we can see right here, it's just going to be little ellipses. So we're just going to give that a couple of minutes to run to identify what might be on that particular property. One other way that we can also evaluate it is by our usable area criteria. So this is where we can come in and we can set specific criteria on setbacks from floodplains, land cover considerations, steep slopes, water bodies, streams and rivers, wetlands, and things like that to remove those from the actual usable acreage on the property. So with this, you have a couple of customizable areas here where we can look at different land cover considerations. If we wanted to go ahead and consider developed areas and forested areas as potentially usable because we can make those modifications, then we can have that over here on the usable area side. We can also keep wetlands and open water and other items over here on the right-hand side that would not be considered usable. So it is a nice customizable feature to be able to select what you would like. And when it comes to the aspect of slope, you can go ahead and select different buckets of criteria so that you can actually keep those steep slopes off your site so that they're not considered usable. You can also get as granular as the aspect of it as well. So if you wanted to go ahead and ignore north-facing slopes or other sided slopes, then you can do that too. So this is a pretty small site. It's only going to be 7 acres in size, but we can run that usable area calculation once we get done with the report, the constraint reporting. So it looks like that's done. So if we were to go ahead and click this report and pull this up, we're going to get an outline of our site. And then these are the different data sets that we asked to report out on. So it's not going to include every data set in the platform, but we could if we wanted to, or we could just select the ones that we really want to be able to identify. So at least with this particular report, we're able to identify that there's not an occurrence of shallow bedrock on the property. We're not going to be in an area of floodplains. We don't have shallow water, but we do have a couple of infrastructures and structures close by. It is part of an IRA energy community. And as we scroll down through here, then it's going to give us an idea of the species range, the critical species and habitat, and extreme weather events as well. Because oftentimes we're going to want to understand if there are those extreme weather events possible on a site, just to know that potential for potential damaging conditions that might occur. So we can come down here, we can start to see some of those extreme wind events. We can see some of the tornado events. We can see where we have extreme lightning, and then also hail as well. So it's a nice comprehensive report to get a lot of that information to just understand what's nearby and on the site. Now, if we were to run the usable area calculations on the property, let's go ahead and take a look. I'm not sure. It's only 7 acres in size, so I'm not sure what it's going to come up as. It might come up as 0 because it's a smaller site and it starts to remove a lot of those little features. Yep, and it came up as 0. So why don't we turn on the constraints and see what it's identifying and showing us. So it looks like, from what I can see here, slope is going to be the main concern on the site, why we're not having a lot of usable area. So we can see those areas identified here as having those steeper slopes. If we go back over here to the slope area, we limited it to 15% as a slope. So that's why it's coming up and telling us that we have a significant amount of the property that's going to exceed that 15% slope. Frank, was there anything specific that you were looking for on the property? Well, Frank, I'm waiting for you to respond back if there was anything specific that you were looking for. Some of the other ways that you can actually use the platform to help out is that, let's say this is a particular site that you're interested in pursuing from a purchase standpoint. That what we did is we looked through here, we're looking for the constraints. We wanted to reach out to property owners. We can actually download their contact information within the platform too. So if you needed to, you can start to pull out their mailing address, get an idea of the APN of the site, and you can actually get an image of the site overlay itself in order to reach out to the property owner to get an idea that they'd be interested in pursuing a purchase agreement. Oh, karst conditions. Okay. Yeah, we can actually view that. What we can actually view on here is the potential for karst on the property, as well as with sinkhole potential as well. So if we go over here, we can actually look at the karst topography map, and this is going to let us know if we do have karst or different types of conditions over here and what might be going on. So if we turn that on, we'll let that overlay on the property. And it doesn't look like it's pulling up a specific karst concern. We can click into here and just see if there is anything that does come up. With the pivot search, when you click into a parcel, what it's going to do is actually return information on the different data sets that are occurring at that particular location. So if there was a potential for karst, or if there was that concern, we could look into here into the geotechnical area, and we can actually pull up what that potential karst condition would be. So we've got some soil conditions. See, we got the jurisdictional information. But yeah, I'm not seeing a lot of information on karsts on this particular site. But that is something that we can certainly pull up if there are other areas so that we can see of those potential concerns. And one other thing that we could do is that we have the national data sets for karst topography, and if there was something that from a national standpoint we're not pulling up on the property, but we do know that there was a karst condition or a sinkhole condition, then what we could do is we could actually come into our site sketch feature and we could actually add particular areas of concern that we want to stay away from and also not consider as part of usable area. So we can come in here and we could actually drop a point, put that right in here, and then we could buffer that by, let's say, 100 feet, if that's what we needed to say. We could actually say that this was a potential karst. So that way we can actually flag that. We can know that from a local standpoint that there was a concern on the property to stay away from that. We can buffer that and avoid that particular area. Oh, sure. So we got another question coming up here in the chat. Demonstrate how site selection compares to traditional site selection methods in terms of speed and accuracy. Yes, we certainly can. So let's go ahead and put in this property here. We'll go to that area to take a look at. All right, so we have a site right over here. So let's say if we were doing a traditional site within Pivot siting application, we'll just keep that site in mind and we'll keep that over there. What we can do is we can go ahead and make sure that we have our infrastructures and data set turned on for power lines, substation locations, to get an idea of how we can actually search around those particular areas. So let's say, for instance, this was an area that we were looking at. That's a site that we want to evaluate. Maybe we also want to evaluate some other sites in the area too, just to cross compare to this particular site here. So what we can do is we'll come in here and we'll take a look at that. We'll add that to our project sites so that we have that on hand. And then let's go ahead and see if we can find some other sites in the area that could be useful to us. So let's start off by saying, let's go ahead and use this particular substation up here as a center location. So we can do prospecting and searching based on the center location. We can pull in a transmission line segment and we can buffer that in order to identify areas of opportunity, or we could just drop a point in space and we could search around that. When we want to actually set our center location, we can come in here and we can click into this substation, and we can get information on the actual station name and the operator and the max voltage information where we have that available. So it's as simple as just coming up here and just clicking this button here to set that as our center location. And that's going to replace our previous search location. So now we've got that as our center location, and we can start to identify the search around here in order to find other properties that we might find suitable. So over here, we can start to select the size of the properties that we want to look for, and also if we want to search by tax map parcels or by smart parcel capabilities. So with our tax map parcel, what that's going to look for is just traditional tax map property parcel sizes that would fit the criteria that we're looking for. Let's say we're just looking for at least minimum parcel sizes of 200 acres. Then we can hit that search. And what that's going to do is search within 2 miles of that substation of properties that fit our criteria. So it's just from an access standpoint, we've already identified now 14 potential sites that are at least 200 acres or greater that we can actually bring into our pipeline. So this definitely does save time on a traditional site selection process where we can go in here from a self-service standpoint and start to pull in properties that are identifiable to us that we want to actually look at to see if that could be suitable for our development. So these areas in green here are where we have identified those potential opportunities. With the smart parcel search, what that's going to do is look at it from a land ownership perspective. And if there are property owners in the area that have smaller parcels than the 200 acres that we are looking at, but they're adjacent to each other, then we're going to aggregate that together to see if we can't find additional opportunities. So when we do that search, we actually found one additional parcel than what we had found before because that property owner has smaller parcels that we can group together in order to create that larger opportunity. So in this case, it was one extra parcel. In some cases, you can actually get up to 50% more parcels in the area just by being able to switch over to the smart parcel capability. So it's a very nice feature to have and does aid in the site selection process and the speed at which you can actually identify those areas. So once we find areas that do look interesting to us, what we can do is we can go ahead and click this little information icon here, and we can click into these parcels, and it's going to identify to us who that property owner is. It'll give us an outline of the property parcels that they have available to them. So in here, we can see that this particular parcel here has a 388 acre parcel and 137 and a 4 acre parcel. So now we can start to group all of these together to identify that as a potential pursuit. So that's as simple as just coming over here and clicking this little plus button, and that's going to add that over to our project sites. And then we can start to run some of that additional evaluation. Let's say there's one other one that we want to look at. This one looks pretty interesting here too. So we can bring that one in and we can start to run some of that search too. So now that we have those in our project sites, then we can come over here and we can start to run, again, some of those usable acreage calculations to just recalculate to see what we have going on. So let's go ahead and click that calculate button, and let's see what we've got going on here. Oh, okay, we have another question coming up. Maximum number of parcels can handle before performance issues or crashes. The limit that you can have in your project sites would be 500 parcels. And so the platform itself will be able to handle up to that amount at once. And then it would just depend on the size of the parcels and the amount of constraints. As you can see, we just clicked here, we just reran our usable area calculations, and they calculated here just in a couple of seconds. So I would imagine that if you had 500 parcels in there, it would take a little bit of time, but it wouldn't take too much time for it to process. So if we wanted to come in and now do some evaluations, again, like what we were doing before on some of the other parcels, we can already see that our project site constraints are up on the screen. And we've got a pretty significant floodplain over here on this property. We've got some slope concerns over here. It looks like we got some other little easement areas here. Let's start to turn these on and just see what those are. Those look like they could be maybe some pipelines, some power line segments here. So this does help us just quickly identify kind of what's going on there. And then we can also run some of those additional reports that I was showing as well. Let's just find this one here. Mildred is right there. So let's just go over here. We'll just run another one of those constraint reports, and we'll just see what else is identified on the property. And while that's running, one other way that you can actually start to cross-compare some of these sites to actually help with that site selection to narrow that down is if you were to come over here to our reports icon, we can actually start to run some more detailed reports of the sites that we have in our portfolio. These are not the ones we just pulled in, but these are ones that we had in here before we just started to run the program. This we can come in here, we can actually start to cross compare sites side by side, and then we can see just from a standpoint of, let's say we were interested in the 100-year floodplain and we wanted to cross compare that among all of our sites. We could cross compare that 100-year floodplain here in this reports icon. We can go to any of our other data sets in order to understand the other constraints on the property. If we have shallow water conditions, we can look at that and get the crossing details associated with that. We can also sort of look at our high-res slope, and we can look at sites if they're part of the Inflation Reduction Act. This is going to give us an idea of the energy communities and the criteria met. So this does have a lot of different ways that we can actually cross-compare sites to help narrow down which ones are actually going to be the best suited for what we want to actually accomplish. And so let's go back and let's go back to our site over here. I'm curious to see if Mildred has any other things going on her property. We'll know here in just a second. All right, so that one appears to be done now. Okay, so here we have our usable area on the property of the 530 acres. We had about 218 there. And then we can go ahead and click through here and just see what other occurrences are actually going on this property. So do have some occurrences of some environmental justice and some structures. Let's see if we have any species considerations. We have a species range, but we don't have any kind of critical species and habitat. We do have some weather events that are occurring on the property too. So we can go into these areas of the report. It's going to give us just a little bit more detail on each one of these data sets on the ecosystem boundary, some of the environmental justice considerations in the area here. We can actually map out that floodplain here. We can get the acreage and impact associated with that, along with the flood frequency and a lot of other information in here as well. And this is always interesting to come in here and look at the infrastructures and structures. So this is just nearby publicly available registered information on potential nearby infrastructure that may or may not impact your development. So we can see on this particular property outline, we've got a couple of areas in here that do have some water wells within the property. And then if we start to look off-site, then we can start to get another idea of some of the other infrastructures and structures nearby. So we do have a lot of different water wells in the area, some stormwater construction. This would also let us know if we did happen to have any kind of publicly registered environmental concerns, if there were anything like that nearby. It'll also pull up information on the National Register of Historic Places, just to see if we do have any of those nearby as well. So here, yeah, we can actually see that we do have one here that's a hazardous waste site that looks like it's about 3/4 of a mile away from the site. We can start to pull up some of that information here, get a little bit more info on what that actually means and if that may impact your development. Oh, and this is interesting. We'd also have a brownfield property that's about a mile away from the site too. So this is very helpful from the standpoint of being able to look at that. If that happened to be on your site or near your site that might impact your development, this is all critical information that you're going to want to know. And here we can see from a tax eligibility perspective that it would be part of the IRA tax eligibility. And one other thing that we could actually look at too is that we do have on here within the property, we have a couple of different structures that are on the property, and that might be just private residences. Maybe if this is the Mildred's house, they might have areas that they want to actually keep maybe away from the development. So over here, if we were to have the residences here, we have the some of the power line infrastructure that's coming in this area. They may say, hey, just around here in this area here, Please don't look at that for development. We want to go ahead and consider other areas that would be perfectly fine for development. This open area here you can consider for it as well, but we have certain areas and certain criteria that we just want you to stay away from. So one thing that we can do with our site sketch is that we can come in here and we can map out those areas that the property owner has asked us to not consider from a development standpoint. So we can come in here and we can just hand draw or upload, if we have an uploaded KMZ, of areas that we just don't want to go ahead and consider. So if we go ahead and highlight that and just say no development, then what we can do is we can include that in our usable area calculations. So if we come over to Mildred's property and we go ahead and highlight the usable area, we turn that on, those areas in purple are the areas that we have identified as actually usable and that we can actually develop. So if we were to go ahead and include this in the calculation and then we were to rerun that, we have about 218 acres on the property right now. And that's going to go down just a little bit because we're telling it to exclude those areas. So we can see from that development standpoint, we've gone ahead and we've removed that from being developable. So now we're down to about just over 200 acres of developable area. So not only can you take advantage of the layers and the information within Pivvot, but you can also bring in your own information too. So whether that's something you wanted to upload and overlay on the site, maybe perhaps even working with a cultural, if you have some cultural concerns on the site, you were going to the State Historic Preservation Office and you had some information on some historical cultural issues on the site, you could upload those and overlay those and be able to exclude those from the usable area. Oh, sure. Okay. We'll look at another area for flood zone concerns. So let's just go ahead and plug in this lat long. All right, let's kind of zoom in here. So let's go ahead, and we don't need to run the constraints. We can just visualize any of the data that we want in the area. So we've shown you kind of some of the reporting that we can run and some of the outputs, but you can always just come in and just visualize it just to examine the area for just potential flood zones. So if we were to come in and just go ahead and turn on some of the flood maps that we have over here, we can turn on the FEMA base flood elevations. We can turn on the panel boundaries. We have our flood zones that we can turn on as well. And so we can see in here we've got a pretty low percentage chance of some flooding going on in here. We could also click within this particular area and we could take a look at that and see what kind of information we get back. Right now we are in a 500-year floodplain, reduced risk to levee. So it looks like it's a fairly okay area from a floodplain concern. I don't think we'd have a 100-year floodplain in the area if we were to turn that on. So we have some of that outside that particular area. So some of the surrounding areas, but it looks like areas within that particular lat long that you provided to me, doesn't look like it's going to be within those zones. If we click outside of that into this area here, that's probably going to show us that we have the 100-year floodplain, that is the 100-year floodplain there, and we have more of a flooding potential there. So it's nearby areas, but that particular area that we looked at doesn't appear to have a lot of flood zone concerns. Does that help out, Frank? Was there anything else you wanted to know about it from a flood concern? Oh, hi, Amanda. Yes, Pivvot does have access to the National Register of Historic Places. So we do have a couple of different layers that you can use for that. One would be our infrastructures and structures data set. So if we were to turn off some of these just to clean that up a little bit, and if we were to go to infrastructures and structures, we can turn that on and we can get information on the National Register of Historic Places within this layer. And we have also separated that out into its own separate layers as well. So if you wanted to just get specifically to point location and polygon locations for that information, then we can turn that off and we can come over here and we can turn on those specific layers and we can get information on that. Oh, now where did I go? There we go. So we can get those points. If we were to turn that on, it's going to show us point locations, or we can actually get polygon locations for those particular district and boundary outlines. So let's turn off the 100-year floodplain. And let's just zoom out and just see if we do see any points popping up, at least within this area here. I'm going to turn off the parcels as well, just to clean that up a little bit. Okay, we're going to go to our areas here. And it looks like, at least within this particular area, I'm not seeing a lot of registered historic places in here. Oh, I have another question. Customized data dashboards for reporting to match specific project needs. Yes, you can create specific templates and dashboard reporting depending on what your project is. So I was showing some of those constraint reports that you can run on parcel identification. You can actually customize those and have those built as a particular template in order to have those specific outputs every time that you're actually running one particular project. And then if you have other project needs, then you can customize that as well. Oh, sure. Another location coming in here to check that out for usable area. Let's go in and pull in that location. Right. So just interesting, kind of, since we were talking about the National Register of Historic Places, that we did have a couple of actual point locations pop up right here. Even though we're going to look at usable area here, we can already identify and just see that there actually are a couple of locations nearby this site that actually popped up to come up on that particular data set. So if we were to click on that, I'm just curious to see if we get a little bit more info on there. Oh, okay. So we have a historic site and landmark right there. It's a cultural heritage site. Historic house. Okay, that's kind of cool. All right. Well, we'll go back to here. Let's turn on our property parcel so that we can pull in that property parcel. Let me just make sure I go right back to that spot. Okay, so it's that one right there. So let's go ahead and bring that one in. Okay, so we've got about 176 acres there. So from a usable area perspective, again, I'm just going to go back and just show you kind of what we're going to do from a customized standpoint. I'm going to leave off, wetlands and open water and those types of features as not being considered usable, because we typically don't want to think of those as usable. And then I'll just leave some of these forested areas and developed areas as usable, because oftentimes you can make those types of modifications. So I'll just leave it as that. And then the slope, I'll go ahead and just do the 15% slope as well, just to keep that kind of in our typical format that we have set up here. So let's go ahead and run the usable area there. And we'll see here in just a second. So we have 176. We have 166 acres of usable area. So that's actually pretty good. So you can see how quick it is to run these particular constraint reports and the usable area reports. It's because it goes in there and it actually does a pretty quick processing. Doesn't look like there's much on the property other than just the basic outline on the property along the outside, and then just a structure location right there. So from a usable area standpoint, this particular site actually does look pretty decent. I have another question. Oh, Amanda. Okay. Yeah, if you are exploring multiple locations, then you can actually see those sites side by side. So if we were to go over to our reports tab, just to show you what that looks like, once we bring in those multiple sites, we can come in here and we can select these, and then we can run those detailed reports on all of these sites. So we can go in and we can see just any kind of information that we'd like to, if we're concerned about, if we wanted to go to karst topography, if we felt like there was a karst concern on the site. These three sites here, it doesn't appear that there's any kind of karst considerations there. If we need to look at mines, we don't see any mining considerations. If we're looking at wetlands, so it looks like we do have some concerns on wetlands popping up on several of these properties that we can cross compare and identify which one would have a higher potential for that constraint as opposed to others. So it's a very easy way to cross compare that. And then if you wanted to, you could actually export these in Excel format. So if you wanted to have just a table available in front of you to use, then you can have that and export that, apply costing considerations and things like that to that Excel file. Oh, great question, Amanda. Yes, you can actually share those with external stakeholders and internal stakeholders. So within Pivot, as part of a subscription, we don't limit the number of users that you have on the platform. You can have as many people on the platform as you'd like. And over here, you can actually set your folder criteria so that if you have a search in an area and you have multiple searches within a particular area, you can keep those searches into one parent folder. And then you can come over and you can easily share it by this button right here just to share the project. So this can be shared externally or internally within the project team. All you have to do is just provide those users access, and then you can bring them over and then you can share that, and then they'll get access to the project. So it's a nice way to be able to hop on the phone, share screens, kind of run through the work that you've been working on, so that your external clients can kind of track the progress and see how things are going. So I'll just go back to Frank's question on the usable area on this previous property that we just went into. Um, does that answer your question on what you need? I mean, we did get into the usable area. I just wanted to see if there's anything else you wanted to know about that site. Cool. Thanks, Frank. All right, Amanda had another question. Working with a telecom client, is this a good tool for them? Yes, Pivot is a good tool for our telecom clients. So what I'm showing right here is our siting application that helps with polygonal land searching, usable area, things like that. We also have several other applications that can help support our telecom clients. They can drop points and they can do radial searches if you're looking at it from a tower siting perspective. We also have a linear application that can help support fiber as well. So if you're looking at fiber installation and trying to understand that type of constraint reporting, we can go into our Aware application. And this is going to give you the ability to run searches on not only just polygonal locations or point locations, but also linear locations as well. So if we were to go into one of our projects that we did have some of the linear options run, in here we have a couple of different areas that we were evaluating. So we had a tower location here, a tower location here that we were evaluating. So we can run reporting on that. And then we also have these two linear options here that I have on the screen, one that's running this way over this direction and over here. So if you're looking at that from a fiber installation standpoint, or even a telecommunications tower installation standpoint, we can have these features in the platform, and then we can go to our downloads and our reports, and then we can start to look at those constraint reports, those. And then we can also generate some of our permitting reports as well. So these are going to be permitting reports from a federal standpoint. So we're going to look at just common federal level permits that may apply depending on the data sets that are intersecting those locations. So we'll be able to get a quick yes, no. Do those permits apply or do they not apply here in just a little bit? And as we're running that constraint reporting too, we can go over to our reports console. So even in our Aware application, just like our siting application, we can come in and we can cross compare sites for the clients as well. So if we're looking at our linear options for fiber, then we can again come through here and we can take a look at those constraints crossing those locations. So if we are concerned about the potential for hard rock as we go in from a construction standpoint, we can identify where those potential locations could be. We can also flash those records and see where that's actually popping up and map it and go into that location too. And then if we want to look at that from a telecom perspective, just different tower locations, we can also look at those tower locations, turn off our linear areas, and then just cross compare the areas that we're looking at from a tower perspective. So let's say if we were concerned about maybe the 100-year floodplain, we can see here, looking at our two different tower locations, that the first location does have a more significant potential for floodplain concerns than the second location. So just very quickly, we can identify these using Pivvot. Just from sitting here at our desk, we can cross compare that and get that in a couple of minutes. Yep, you're welcome, Amanda. Oh, great question, Frank. So the difference between the Aware and the siting application, would you need both if you're looking to build a data center? No, you wouldn't necessarily need both. I think they both provide, they can provide similar reporting, but the siting application is a little bit different from the standpoint of you get a little bit more features and functionality. So with siting, if you are looking to actually site a data center and you need to know that you are within maybe, let's say, for instance, 2 miles of a substation location for power, you also want to be near a roadway for access to just local facilities. The siting application is going to give you the ability to actually prospect and look for land based on those particular features. With Aware, it's going to really be more, you already have the idea of the location. You're not necessarily needing to prospect and look for it. You don't need the usable acreage associated with the siting tool, but you just want to be able to upload the site, run the reporting, get an idea of the permits that might be coming up on the property. That's what Aware is going to be able to provide to you. So think of Aware as kind of like Google Earth on steroids, access to a lot of data, a lot of information that you can just pull up at your fingertips. And the siting application is just going to give you more features to actually find sites and locate those and bring those in to evaluate those side by side. All right, so we ran some of this reporting here. Let's look at one of these locations just from a federal permitting standpoint. So if we were looking at this particular tower location and we wanted to know if there are potential permits that may come up if I were to site my tower at that location. So we can see here that as we were cross comparing the different data sets in the platform with these potential permits, we're going to look at critical species and habitat. So that we can see here on the bald eagle or golden eagle permit protection, it's not triggered because we did not see that particular data set occur on the property. But we do have a Fish and Wildlife Coordination Act review that's coming up, a lot of some other permits here. And then if we go to the second page, it'll give us a few more that we need to be looking at. And then as we go to different sections of the report, this is going to give us a little bit more information on that particular permit, the description associated with that, and the occurrences and subtypes of actually what occurred on that property as to why that particular permit was triggered. So it's very helpful from just a very quick standpoint to know if you are going to have any delays on the property because you might have a long permitting time frame, and maybe you need to be looking at maybe another property just based on that particular permit need. And then we go back to our constraint reports. We'll pull these up, very similar to what you've seen so far earlier in the program. We can go here and we can quickly again identify which is occurring and which is not occurring, so we can get an idea of just those potential features that we need to be aware of. Oh, great question. Yeah, the types of data in the platform and how often it is updated. Let me pull up a slide here real quick that's going to give you a list of the data that we have within the platform. It is a very good mix between environmental, soils related information. We have demographics in the platform. We have jurisdictional boundaries and energy infrastructure. So there is a lot of different data sets, over 100 different data sets in the platform that you can utilize when you're running those types of constraint reporting. From an updating perspective, most of the data is publicly available. So we'll reach out to those agencies typically every 60 to 90 days and just ask for those updates. And if they have an update, then we will bring that in and we'll curate that. We'll put that into the platform. If they don't have an update, we'll at least post the most recent published date. For some of our other entities where we actually purchase the data from, like our parcel vendors and our energy and infrastructure data set, we'll reach out to them a little bit more regularly to ask them for updates. And again, if there are updates, then we'll publish that. And if there are not updates, then we'll just go ahead and post the most recent published date. So I'm going to close that down for just a second, and I'm going to show you when we go into the platform how that looks. So if we were to click into the platform just to get information on data that's occurring in that location, and we were curious about the most recent published date, we could click this box right down here. And then if we wanted to go to the data set that we wanted to take a look at, let's say again, the 100-year floodplain, we can click on that. We can click through, get some more information and details on this particular data set, and then we can get the most recent published date right here, which would be October of 2024. So it kind of fits into the typical cycle. Sometimes you might see dates on there that say 2023, and that's just because there just hasn't been updates in that particular amount of time. But we do always reach out to the agencies and ask for those updates and publish those when available. Was there a particular data set that you're looking for as I was showing those on the screen? Did that kind of cover what you would expect in a platform like this, or would there be a particular data set that you would be looking for that would not be shown? Well, this is something that folks are interested in getting a little bit more information on these data sets, and we can send that out after the fact if you'd like to take a look at those. Yeah, you're welcome. Okay. So I've been showing a lot of different reporting on here, just ways that we can evaluate the sites. I do want to mention that in addition to the PDF reports and the Excel reports that we talked about exporting, that you are actually able to export the raw data from the platform. So if you get to a point that you want to pull this data out and start to use it in other GIS applications, and maybe you have a GIS group that wants to take a look at it, start to prepare preliminary cut fill maps or things like that, you can actually download the raw data out of the platform and use it for that as well. Okay, we do have another question. Scalable for projects of varying sizes from small scale developments to large infrastructure projects? Yes, absolutely. You can scale that. So we do have customers in the platform that use it for this for smaller sites, let's say battery storage. They're looking at the site battery storage sites. They're looking at EV charging stations, small facilities like that where they're just needing to drop point locations and just get quick reporting. It's very suitable for that. And we do have customers that use it for large scale wind development, where you have thousands of acres that you're needing to identify and run usable area and constraint reporting to site and look at wind turbine locations. So we do have clients that do that. So it is scalable from small scale development up to large scale development too. Okay, another question. Mentioned IRA data. Can you show more of how that works? Yeah, we can turn on the IRA data set. So the IRA data set, let's go ahead and go into the data dictionary. We're going to pull up some information on that so the people in the group can see that. Let's just find that. The IRA energy community. So what we've done in here is we've gone in here and we looked at the different criteria that would actually meet the criteria for the IRA. So in here, you're going to be able to get a definition of that and how that actually applies. And we're going to have information. We're going to have all the different subtypes in here so that you can see, depending on the IRA, if it's going to meet one criteria or two criteria, or it's not going to be within the energy community. So we're going to be able to look at that from the brownfield perspective and also the energy communities. So this is going to give you a lot of great information of how that's actually being incorporated into the Pivvot platform, and then how it would actually look within the platform too. So we've got here where we have an energy community where we have the different criteria that have they've been met, or if it's not within that particular energy criteria community. Oh, Amanda has another question. Is that seat-based, number of projects? What is the pricing structure like? Yeah, that's a great question, Amanda. So it's going to depend on the application that you'd like to subscribe to. We've shown you the siting application or aware application, and then we also have a routing application too to help you with a long-haul pipeline routing or electrical transmission routing. And so we don't limit the subscriptions by the number of users in the platform. It's going to be unlimited users. You can have as many as you'd like. It's really going to be based more on the number of projects that you want to store in the platform and the amount of reporting that you want to run and what you want to export out of the platform. So we have entry-level packages that can be as low as about $9,000 for a subscription year, and we can scale those up to large scale use and large scale data needs that could be up to about $40,000 a year. So we can definitely work with our different clients and customers on kind of what they need and right size the package depending on what they would need to use. So for those that really have a lot of need for data downloads and data exports, we can put them into that right package. Or if they're just more interested in maybe just data visualization and maybe minimal report running, then we can fit them into the package that way as well. Oh, Frank, yep. We do have a free trial option. We can open up any of our applications for 2 weeks and have that as a complimentary trial. The easiest way to do that is just reach out to me. We can just set up a quick time to just give you access to the platform, run through a quick training session just to give you an idea of kind of what button does what. Or if you just don't have time for a training session, we can turn on that trial for you. We have a lot of self-service videos and self-service tutorials within the Pivvot program that would give you the ability to go ahead and run through that yourself. Oh, another question, site selection platform part, something to preview during your free trial. Yes, that is something that we can make as part of the free trial. So we can include the siting application as part of the free trial, the Aware application, or we can do our routing application too if you're more interested in routing electrical transmission lines or pipelines or things like that. Oh, another question, what kind of early cost analysis could I do on Pivot to help select the most cost-effective site? Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think that's going to come down to, I guess, what's going to be more costly for you. I think a lot of our clients kind of have an understanding of maybe those top 5 items that they feel is going to be most costly to them. So while we might not have a specific cost tool within the siting application to look at it from a site-by-site basis, you can at least start to run those reports, get an idea of the constraints on the property that would be more costly for you to develop, and then you can pull that out of the platform, and then you can maybe apply some of those costing numbers to that in order to see which site would actually be most beneficial to you. Within our routing application, we do have a rough cost estimation tool template. That's just based for electrical transmission routing that is generally based on some industry parameters. So there is a costing tool associated with our routing application. So that is something that is built in there. From the siting application, we do have people that will mostly just go in, run the reporting, identify the constraints on the property, pull that out of the platform, and then apply that cost to those in order to understand which site would be most costly to them. All right. Well, it looks like we're coming up here at the clear near the top of the hour. We have a couple minutes left. I'll just open it up real quick just to see if there are any other questions, comments, or areas you want to look at real quick. All right. Well, appreciate everybody joining in today. It was nice to be able to chat with you and answer some of your questions. Please feel free to reach out if you'd like to have any other further discussions. I'm just always happy to have a conversation. So enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.